Ella, a determined young woman from humble beginnings, chose the path of hard work and integrity, staying focused on her studies while her friends indulged in the fleeting pleasures of a lavish lifestyle. After graduation, while her friends married wealthy men and lived in luxury, Ella joined her husband, Alex, in managing a small laundry business. Despite constant mockery from her friends, who flaunted their wealth, Ella remained true to her values. Over time, her dedication paid off as their business grew, and they achieved financial success. Meanwhile, her friends' marriages crumbled, plagued by infidelity, poor choices, and the consequences of chasing material wealth. In the end, Ella's quiet determination and commitment to building something meaningful made her the most successful of them all, proving that true success is rooted in integrity, hard work, and love, not fleeting riches. Before we start, please like, share, comment, and if you're joining us for the first time, don't forget to subscribe. Let's dive in. In the heart of the university campus, where young dreams intertwined with ambition and youthful zest, Ella stood as a beacon of simplicity amidst the chaos of college life. Her skin glowed with the radiance of youth, and her eyes sparkled with the quiet confidence of a young woman determined to chart her own course. Unlike most of her peers, Ella had not been lured into the world of nightlife, lavish parties, or fleeting relationships. She didn't seek validation through social media posts or the attention of the popular crowd. Instead, she was dedicated to her studies, knowing that education was the key to unlocking the future she desired. Ella came from humble beginnings. Her parents were not rich by any measure, but they were hardworking and instilled in her a strong sense of values, honesty, integrity, and the belief that hard work would eventually pay off. Her mother often told her, "Ella, there's no shortcut to success. Your hands may be empty now, but with the right effort, they will be full someday." Ella took these words to heart. Every day, she spent hours in the library, poring over textbooks, taking notes, and preparing for exams. To her, it was never about being the best in the room, but about being the best version of herself. She believed that her education would provide her with the tools to change her life, and that was enough. But Ella's journey at university was far from easy. She was surrounded by a circle of friends who didn't share her values, friends who believed that beauty and charm could take them anywhere in life. They partied every weekend, attending wild nightclubs and engaging in casual flings with the wealthy men who frequented the campus. These were the men who had money, the ones who could buy them anything they wanted, from expensive clothes to trips abroad. The girls flaunted their wealth, their designer handbags, and their flawless makeup as if it were a badge of honor. Ella's friends often invited her to join them, promising her a taste of the life they led, a life of freedom, of no strings attached, of living in the moment. "Come on, Ella," they would say, "you're wasting your time studying. You're so pretty, you could have any man you wanted. Why not enjoy yourself like we do?" But Ella, with her unwavering resolve, would politely decline. She didn't need their approval, nor did she crave the lifestyle they had. "That I am focused on my studies," she would say with a soft smile. "I'll figure out my future on my own terms." And so, while her friends partied until dawn, Ella spent her weekends in the library, attending study groups, and volunteering for various campus activities. She didn't mind the solitude that came with her choices. She found peace in knowing she was building something lasting for herself, something that couldn't be bought with fleeting pleasures. Her friends couldn't understand Ella's dedication. They often mocked her for her boring lifestyle, teasing her about her reluctance to participate in their wild escapades. "Ella, you're such a nerd," they'd say, rolling their eyes. "Come on, live a little. You're missing out on all the fun. You should be enjoying your youth." But Ella was resolute. She knew what she wanted from life, and it wasn't temporary thrills. It was success, a success built on the foundation of hard work and education. As the months passed, the campus became a stage for Ella's inner transformation. She found herself increasingly disconnected from her friends' antics. They were caught up in the whirlwind of flirtations, fast cars, and expensive drinks, while she kept her eyes on the prize. She was building a future, one that didn't rely on anyone else but herself. In the early days of her first year, Ella had made a quiet promise to herself that she would graduate with honors, that she would work hard and prove that there was more to life than instant gratification. She wanted to be an example of what true determination and perseverance could achieve. While her friends sought validation through the men they flirted with or the material possessions they collected, Ella found her strength in books, in learning, and in building a future based on her own merits. Sometimes, Ella would watch her friends at the campus parties, dressed in glitzy outfits and laughing with the men who bought them drinks. They were carefree and loud, full of energy and eager for the next thrill. But Ella always felt a pang of sadness when she saw them. She knew that their lives, however glamorous, were built on shallow foundations. She knew they didn't understand the importance of hard work and self-respect, things that her parents had taught her were the cornerstones of a successful life. One evening, as Ella sat in the library, flipping through the pages of a textbook, she overheard her friends gossiping in the hallway. They were talking about the latest party, about the men they had met, and about the extravagant weekend they had planned. As their laughter echoed down the corridor, Ella couldn't help but feel a sense of alienation. She had once tried to be part of their world, to blend in with the crowd. But now, she saw it for what it was, a distraction from the real work that lay ahead. Her friends would never understand her. But Ella had made peace with that. She didn't need them to validate her choices. The path she had chosen was one of self-respect and long-term fulfillment. And though her friends continued to mock her, to tease her about her quiet life and boring routine, Ella knew that she was on the right track. As the days turned into months and the months into years, Ella's time at university came to an end. Graduation day arrived, and while her friends were busy arranging glamorous celebrations and boasting about their relationships with wealthy men, Ella felt a deep sense of accomplishment. She had earned her degree through hard work and discipline. And no one could take that away from her. Her friends continued to mock her, calling her the local champion who had married an ordinary man and worked in a simple laundry business. But Ella didn't mind. She knew that their mockery was rooted in their own insecurities. They couldn't understand her choice, and she didn't need them to. She had chosen her own path, one that was filled with hard work, integrity, and a steadfast belief in herself. Ella's journey had just begun. She didn't know where it would lead, but she was ready. For the first time in her life, she felt free. The world ahead of her was full of possibilities, and she was determined to seize them all. The transition from university life to the real world was a sharp one for Ella. While her friends had spent their college years partying, dating rich men, and planning their next weekend adventure, Ella had focused all her energy on her studies. Her world had been textbooks, assignments, and long nights of quiet reflection. But once the graduation ceremonies were over and the caps were thrown in the air, the realities of life outside campus began to settle in. Ella's friends seemed to have it all figured out. They were already married or in serious relationships with men who had money, influence, and connections. These were men who had the power to buy them anything they wanted: designer bags, expensive shoes, trips abroad, and luxury cars. It was a life of excess, where material possessions and social status were the ultimate goals. And for most of her friends, that was enough. It didn't matter if the relationships were superficial or if the men were only around for short periods before going back to their countries. They lived for the now, the thrill of living a life that appeared perfect to the outside world. Ella, however, had no such luxury. Despite her excellent academic standing and the pride of graduating with honors, she found herself jobless, struggling to find an opportunity that would pay her well enough to live comfortably. She had spent so much time focused on her studies that she hadn't developed the networking skills that many of her classmates had honed while partying their way through campus. They had learned how to play the game, how to climb the social ladder through connections, flirtations, and favors. For the first few months after graduation, Ella tried to secure a job that aligned with her degree. But it wasn't as easy as she had imagined. Many of her peers had already secured internships or jobs through family connections or the relationships they had built during their time on campus. They didn't have to look for opportunities, they were given them. As Ella sat at home in her small rented room, waiting for an offer that never came, her friends were busy living their lives, posting selfies on social media, and showing off the designer outfits they had bought with their rich boyfriend's money. It was during this time that Ella met Alex. He was nothing like the wealthy, polished men her friends had surrounded themselves with. Alex was a young man with big dreams but limited resources. He ran a small laundry business, a business he had started on his own after dropping out of university. He wasn't wealthy, but he had ambition, and Ella saw in him the same drive and determination that she had in herself. His clothes were simple, his shoes well worn, but his eyes sparkled with passion for his business, and he treated her with respect. Alex wasn't flashy. He didn't own a mansion or drive a sports car. Instead, he worked long hours at the laundry shop, folding clothes, ironing, and making deliveries to customers. Ella admired his work ethic and dedication. He didn't need to rely on anyone else's money, he was building something of his own. His dream was to grow his small laundry business into a successful enterprise, and he was willing to work day and night to make that happen. In the beginning, Ella hesitated. She was used to the idea that a man should have status, money, and connections. But Alex was different. He didn't promise her luxury or a life of ease. Instead, he promised her something far more valuable, the opportunity to build something together, something that they could both be proud of. It wasn't a decision Ella took lightly. She had grown up watching her friends get swept up in the glamour of wealth and status, and part of her still longed for the kind of life they had. The flashy cars, the extravagant trips, the designer clothes, she had imagined herself living that life someday, but the more she thought about it, the more she realized that it wasn't about what she had on the outside. It was about what she could build from the inside, with her own two hands. Ella decided to give it a try. She joined Alex in his laundry business, taking on the role of manager. It wasn't glamorous by any stretch of the imagination, but it was honest work. The first few months were tough. They operated out of a tiny shop on a quiet street, and their customers were mostly local residents who needed their clothes washed and pressed. The money wasn't rolling in, but it was enough to cover their expenses. Ella worked long hours, learning the ins and outs of the business, managing the finances, and handling customer service. Despite the challenges, Ella felt a sense of purpose. She wasn't just sitting around, waiting for someone to give her a job. She was working hard for something that she could call her own. Alex and Ella were a team, each playing their part to make the business grow. Slowly but surely, they built a reputation for quality service and reliability. But even as Ella worked to establish herself in the laundry business, her friends never stopped taunting her. They would visit her at the laundry shop, laughing at her choices. "Ella, you've really settled for less, haven't you?" one of them said, her voice dripping with condescension. "You could have married someone with money, someone who could have given you a better life." But Ella wasn't bothered. She had made her choice, and she was determined to stick with it. Every time her friends came around with their flashy cars and stories of exotic vacations, she simply smiled and focused on her work. She knew that their lives, though filled with material wealth, were built on shaky foundations. They had chased the fleeting pleasures of the world, but Ella was building something solid and lasting. Still, it was hard not to feel the weight of their judgment. Ella often wondered if she had made the right decision. While her friends were buying houses, driving cars, and living the life she had once dreamed of, she and Alex were still working tirelessly to keep their small business afloat. It wasn't easy to watch her friends flaunt their wealth in front of her, but she knew that they were playing a different game, a game that wasn't sustainable. External factors like money and status rather than internal strength and integrity. Ella had to remind herself every day that the road she was on was the right one. She had chosen a path of hard work, patience, and dedication. She wasn't in a race to keep up with anyone. She was building her future, one small step at a time, and nothing could take that away from her. As Ella's life in the laundry business continued to unfold, she started to notice something interesting. While her friends were busy showing off their new cars and expensive clothes, they were also beginning to face the consequences of their choices. Many of them were in unstable relationships, some of them struggling with infidelities and lies. They had spent so much time chasing after the wrong things that they had forgotten the importance of trust, loyalty, and integrity, qualities that Ella held dear. Even as she watched her friends face their struggles, Ella remained committed to her path. She knew that life was not about instant gratification, but about building something meaningful. It might take longer, but in the end, it would be worth it. Her future was in her hands, and she was ready to make it shine. The years after graduation saw Ella and Alex working tirelessly together to build their laundry business. It wasn't an easy journey. There were days when the weight of their dreams felt heavier than the laundry bags they carried. But despite the challenges, they held steadfast. Their shop was small, their resources limited, and the luxury their friends had enjoyed was still a distant dream. But Ella wasn't focused on what they didn't have. She was focused on what she was building, something that would last, something built on integrity, hard work, and mutual respect. Alex, who had once been the dreamer behind the laundry business, was now the engine driving their day-to-day operations. He handled the home deliveries, driving across the city to pick up laundry from clients' homes, ensuring that every garment was handled with care. Meanwhile, Ella ran the operations, managing the staff, keeping the books, dealing with clients, and overseeing the growth of the business. Together, they were an unstoppable team, complementing each other in ways that only true partners could. Their business began to grow. Slowly but surely, their hard work began to pay off. They started receiving more clients, families, small businesses, even a few hotels in the area. While the business wasn't yet booming, there were signs of progress. They had moved into a larger shop, bought a second-hand delivery van, and even saved enough to hire a few employees to help with the workload. The dream that had once seemed so far away was now within reach. However, success, as Ella would soon learn, came with its own set of challenges. As the years went by, her circle of friends, who had once mocked her for marrying an ordinary man and working in a laundry shop, began to drift further away. Their lives had taken a completely different direction. They were now married to wealthy men, living in luxurious homes, and enjoying the fruits of relationships built on wealth, connections, and fleeting pleasures. They had everything Ella had once dreamed of: the designer clothes, the expensive vacations, the flashy cars. But as Ella's friends flaunted their wealth and status, something wasn't quite right. They would come by the laundry shop, dressed in clothes that seemed more expensive than the last time Ella had seen them, laughing about their latest vacations or the new luxury cars they had bought. But beneath their laughter, Ella noticed cracks in their lives. The men they had married, wealthy businessmen, some based abroad, weren't always around. Some were so consumed with their own work and egos that they barely made time for their wives. Others had been unfaithful, their marriages plagued by infidelity. It was as if the very wealth they had once sought had started to unravel their happiness. "Are you still doing this laundry business, Ella?" One of her friends, Bianca, asked one afternoon when she came to visit the shop. She looked at the piles of clothes stacked neatly on the counter, her gaze lingering on the worn chairs and the small space that had once seemed to limit Ella's potential. "You're too good for this. I thought you'd be living the life by now. You could have married a man with money, you know. You could be at the top of the ladder, just like us." Ella smiled politely, but inside, she was beginning to feel the familiar pang of discomfort. Her friends, Bianca, Tina, and the others, had never really understood her. They saw her choices as a waste of time, a road that led to nowhere. They couldn't see past their own flashy lives to understand that Ella's decision to stay true to herself, to her values, was what had given her the strength to build something real. "I'm happy with where I am, Bianca," Ella replied calmly, "in building something that matters. It's not about quick fixes or shortcuts." Bianca scoffed. "Well, maybe you're content, but you're stuck, Ella. Look at me. I married David. He's successful, a CEO of his own company. We're set for life. You could have had that too, you know. And here you are, managing a laundry shop. Ella, however, wasn't bothered. She had heard it all before, the mocking, the condescension. She knew it was coming from a place of insecurity. Her friends had all followed the same path, chasing after money, trying to secure their futures with men who could provide for them. But somewhere along the way, they had sacrificed something more important, themselves. They had sold their souls for material possessions, for the false security that money could buy. And now, many of them were paying the price. As she went about her work, Ella couldn't help but think of how their lives had turned out. Their relationships, built on convenience, were crumbling. Bianca's husband, David, had been caught in several infidelities, and the once glamorous couple was now on the brink of divorce. Tina's marriage, which had seemed so perfect, was falling apart because of her husband's controlling nature and emotional neglect. Their beautiful houses, expensive cars, and flashy vacations couldn't mask the deep cracks in their marriages. Ella, in contrast, was living a simple life. She and Alex had built a small but solid foundation. They were loyal to each other, supporting each other in ways that went beyond what money could buy. Their love for each other wasn't based on material gain, it was built on trust, respect, and shared goals. But even as Ella watched her friends' marriages crumble, she still felt the sting of their judgment. They mocked her, calling her local and boring for not wanting to live the extravagant lifestyle they led. They teased her for sticking with Alex, a man who was still building his business and didn't have the outward appearance of wealth that they all had come to crave. They didn't understand how she could be content with so little. "I don't understand you, Ella," Tina said one evening, sipping champagne in a lounge as she looked down her nose at the humble surroundings of the laundry shop. "You could have married someone who could give you everything you've ever wanted. Why stay with Alex and his little business? You're wasting your life." Ella could feel the hurt in her heart, but she smiled softly. "I'm not wasting my life, Tina. I'm building something real, something that will last. You'll see one day." Her friends couldn't see it. They were too wrapped up in the shallow comforts of their material wealth. But Ella knew the truth. She knew that the life she had chosen, one of hard work, integrity, and patience, was the one that would stand the test of time. Over the years, as Ella and Alex's laundry business slowly grew, they found themselves starting to meet more influential clients. Politicians, business leaders, and high-profile figures began to take notice of the business they had built. They started offering Ella and Alex contracts to provide laundry services for high-end events, and soon enough, their humble shop began to earn significant money. With this new wave of business, Ella and Alex were able to buy a few more cars, move into a larger house, and expand the business. But despite their growing success, the mockery from her friends didn't stop. They continued to visit, flaunting their wealth and lifestyle, always asking when Ella would finally join them in their world. Ella smiled and listened to their stories, but deep inside, she knew she was on a different path, a path that, while harder, was also far more rewarding. Years passed, and Ella's dedication to her work began to show results. What had once been a small, modest laundry shop operated out of the corner of a quiet street was now becoming a recognizable brand in the local community. The shop, though still not large, had become the go-to place for reliable and high-quality laundry services. Customers who once came sporadically now returned with bags of clothes, loyal to the couple's impeccable service. Alex, who had once done all the deliveries himself, was now able to hire additional staff. He spent more time on the business side of things, meeting potential clients and managing the growing operations. Ella, as the manager, kept the day-to-day activities running smoothly. She balanced the accounts, supervised the staff, maintained the customer database, and ensured that every garment that came through their doors was handled with care. They had started doing laundry for a handful of businesses, including some small hotels and restaurants that trusted them to take care of their linens. Ella and Alex were still renting their home, but they were starting to think bigger. With their savings and the growing profits from the business, they began considering options to buy a property of their own. They had been smart with their finances, and though they were not yet wealthy by any standard, their hard work was finally paying off. The couple was building something together, slowly but surely, and their dreams were starting to align. Yet, even as the business flourished, Ella's friends, who had once mocked her for marrying a local laundryman, were still a presence in her life. Their visits to the laundry shop had become more frequent, but their attitudes had not changed. They would drop by, dressed in their latest designer outfits, with the latest gossip about their expensive vacations, shopping sprees, and the men in their lives who continued to buy their affection. Each time they arrived at the shop, they couldn't help but make a few jabs at Ella. "Still working with Alex?" Bianca would ask, a mocking smile curling on her lips. "Still managing a laundry business while we're living the life, huh?" Tina, who had once been Ella's closest friend, would join in with her usual taunting. "It must be nice to be so content with mediocrity, huh? Here we are, driving new cars, living in mansions, and you're still stuck in that little shop, trying to get ahead." Ella, ever graceful, would simply smile and nod. She knew the weight of their words, but she had long since learned not to let their opinions define her. There was no point in trying to explain herself to them. They would never understand. They were living a life that, while flashy, was filled with fleeting pleasures. And no matter how hard they tried to bring Ella down, she knew the truth: their wealth had come at a price, and it was one that Ella wasn't willing to pay. The real tipping point, however, came when Ella and Alex secured a contract to work with a local hotel chain. The hotel had been looking for a reliable laundry service to handle its linens and uniforms, and after a few meetings and discussions, Ella and Alex had impressed the hotel owners enough to earn their business. This deal was a game changer. It would provide steady, lucrative work and give the couple the stability they had been working so hard to achieve. The day the contract was signed, Alex and Ella celebrated. They treated themselves to a modest dinner at a local restaurant, toasting to their success. They didn't need extravagant celebrations or expensive bottles of wine, they were happy simply to know that their hard work had paid off. They were on the right track. But as the weeks passed, Ella began to notice something. The hotel contract brought in a significant amount of money, and with it, more attention. More customers came through their doors, bringing in more laundry for Alex and his team to handle. The couple was finally able to purchase a car, a used sedan that was much better than the old van they had been using for deliveries. It wasn't flashy, but it was practical, and it symbolized the growth they had worked so hard for. But the growth also led to more scrutiny from her friends. They couldn't resist the urge to comment on Ella's success, always looking for ways to undermine her accomplishments. One evening, as Ella worked late at the shop, Bianca showed up unannounced, as usual. She walked in, her heels clicking against the tile floor, dressed in the latest designer outfit that screamed money. Bianca had always been beautiful, with her perfectly done hair and her striking figure, but Ella could see right through the facade. "So, this is where the magic happens, huh?" Bianca said, her eyes sweeping over the laundry equipment with a hint of mockery. "I have to say, I'm impressed. I never thought you'd actually make this work." Ella didn't respond at first. She continued sorting through the laundry, folding clothes with precision. Her hands moved like a machine, but her mind was focused on the bigger picture. She wasn't here for validation from people like Bianca. She was here to build something solid, something that wouldn't crumble at the first sign of a storm. "Still married to your Alex?" Bianca pressed, leaning against the counter as if she were waiting for Ella to break. "You know, you could do so much better. You could be with a man who could give you the life you deserve. He's just a laundry man, Ella. You can't tell me you're happy with this life." Ella met Bianca's gaze, her expression calm but resolute. "I'm very happy, Bianca," she said softly. "This isn't about having the life you think I should have. It's about having a life that makes me feel fulfilled. Alex and I are building something together, and that's more valuable to me than all the money and status you think I need." Bianca smirked, clearly not convinced. "You always were stubborn, Ella. He'll never understand why you chose this path. But hey, I guess that's what makes you, you. And just like that, she was gone. Ella stood there, staring at the door for a moment before she turned her attention back to the laundry. There were still clothes to be folded, customers to attend to, and work to be done. The mockery didn't faze her. It never had. Her friends could never understand the satisfaction she found in hard work, in building something from scratch with Alex, with the love and loyalty they shared. As the months went by, their laundry business continued to grow. They expanded their clientele and were able to hire more staff to handle the increasing demand. Ella became a well-known name in the local business community, respected for her business acumen and for the success she had achieved with Alex. They had made it, they were no longer just surviving, they were thriving. But Ella's friends still lingered in the background, watching with jealousy as their own lives began to unravel. Their marriages were on the rocks, their husbands increasingly distant, and their once glamorous lives were beginning to lose their shine. They came to Ella for advice, but the damage had already been done. They had built their lives on unstable ground, and now they were paying the price. Ella, however, had built her life on something far more solid: love, loyalty, hard work, and a commitment to creating a future she could be proud of. And as the years passed, it became clear to her that the best decision she had ever made was to trust herself and Alex, to build something from the ground up, and to never let the opinions of others sway her from the path she had chosen. The years had not been kind to Ella's former friends. What had once seemed like the perfect life, the flashy cars, designer clothes, luxurious vacations, and the wealth of their well-connected husbands, was starting to unravel at the seams. They had built their lives on shaky foundations, relying on wealth that came from men who were often absent, unfaithful, or emotionally distant. Now, as the years passed, the cracks in their marriages began to show, and the wealth they had once flaunted began to lose its luster. Ella, on the other hand, stood firm. Her life, though humble in comparison, had been built on honesty, integrity, and hard work. She had chosen the harder path, the one that required patience, sacrifice, and resilience. The laundromat, once a small dream, had transformed into a thriving business. And with Alex by her side, they had begun to reap the rewards of their years of effort. They had bought a car, moved into a spacious home, and started to experience the freedom that came with financial independence. But their success was never built on the quick fixes or shortcuts that her friends had chased. It had come through years of dedication, not just to the business, but to their marriage and to each other. Ella couldn't help but watch from a distance as her friends' perfect lives crumbled. Bianca, Tina, and the others, who had once mocked her for choosing a life of hard work and modesty, were now facing the consequences of their choices. They had all married men with money, but not with integrity. Their relationships were founded on appearances, and now they were crumbling under the weight of secrets, infidelities, and lies. Bianca's marriage to David, the CEO, had always seemed perfect on the surface. They lived in a luxurious mansion, took vacations to exotic places, and drove the latest cars. But the cracks in their relationship were apparent to anyone who looked closely. David was frequently away on business trips, leaving Bianca lonely and craving attention. At first, she had filled that void with shopping sprees and socializing, but as the years went on, the emptiness inside her grew. Then came the affair, a secret that would shatter their marriage. David, who had always prided himself on his professional success, had betrayed Bianca with a younger woman. The trust in their marriage was gone, and the once perfect life they had built together was now in tatters. Bianca came to Ella one afternoon, her eyes swollen from tears. "I don't know what to do, Ella," she said, her voice breaking. "David's been seeing someone else. I found out just last week. I don't even know who I am anymore. I've built my whole life on him, on the money, on the appearances. And now it's all falling apart." Ella listened quietly, her heart heavy with sympathy. She had always known that Bianca's life wasn't as perfect as it seemed, but hearing her cry like this was heartbreaking. "You deserve more than this, Bianca," Ella said softly. You deserve a life built on trust, on love, not just money and status. But Bianca was too far gone. I don't know how to get out of this, she whispered, her hands trembling. I've spent so many years pretending, and now it's too late. What will I have left? Ella looked at her friend, her heart aching. She had spent so many years hearing Bianca's criticisms, her mocking words about Ella's boring life. Yet now, here was Bianca, broken and desperate for a way out of the mess she had created. Ella didn't have all the answers, but one thing was clear: the life Bianca had chosen was not sustainable, and it was beginning to implode. Tina, too, was going through her own crisis. Her marriage to Michael, a successful lawyer, had once seemed like the ideal partnership. They had the house, the cars, the vacations, all the trappings of wealth. But Michael had always been distant, consumed by his career. Tina had sought comfort in shopping and socializing, trying to fill the emotional void in her life. It wasn't long before she turned to other men for affection. Michael eventually found out, and their marriage crumbled under the weight of betrayal. Tina came to Ella one evening, her face drawn and weary. I thought I had everything, Ella, she said, her voice shaking. I thought the money and the lifestyle would make me happy. But now I've lost everything. Michael's leaving me. He's had enough of my lies. My deceit. I don't know what to do anymore. Ella hugged her friend tightly, feeling a deep sorrow for her. Tina had once been the one who mocked Ella for her choices, but now she was the one seeking solace. You'll figure it out, Tina. You have a chance to rebuild. It won't be easy, but you can start again. Tina nodded, wiping away a tear. I don't know if I can. I've spent so long living for the wrong reasons. As the months passed, the consequences of their actions became more apparent. Two of Ella's other friends, who had spent their college years in toxic relationships with wealthy men, were diagnosed with HIV. The risky lifestyles they had led, the affairs, the drug abuse, and the constant search for external validation had caught up with them. The wealth they had accumulated now seemed meaningless in the face of their health struggles. Their marriages had fallen apart, and they were left alone to pick up the pieces of their shattered lives. Meanwhile, Ella and Alex's life continued to improve. Their laundry business had grown significantly, attracting high-profile clients from various sectors. Politicians, business magnates, and VIPs now trusted them with their laundry needs. The business had expanded, and with it, their wealth. They bought more cars, moved into a beautiful home in a peaceful neighborhood, and even started to invest in other ventures. But the real success lay in the strength of their relationship. Alex and Ella had built something together that was stronger than any material possession. They had built a legacy, a testament to the values they held dear. Ella's friends, meanwhile, came to her more and more often, seeking advice, comfort, or just a listening ear. Some of them were starting to realize the cost of their choices. You were right all along, Ella, Bianca said one day, her voice quiet with regret. I thought I needed a rich man, a flashy life. But now I see what really matters. It's not the money. It's the love, the respect, the trust. I've lost all of that. Ella nodded gently, understanding all too well. She had made her peace with her friend's judgments years ago. Now, as they faced the consequences of their choices, Ella's heart went out to them. She knew that true success wasn't about wealth, it was about building something meaningful, something that would endure. As the years went by, Ella and Alex's lives continued to flourish. They had built a home for themselves, a thriving business, and a family rooted in love and respect. Their success wasn't measured by the material things they owned, but by the integrity with which they had built their lives. They had stayed true to their values, even when the world around them seemed to be crumbling. In the end, Ella knew that the mockery from her friends had only strengthened her resolve. They had once laughed at her for choosing a humble life, for rejecting the allure of wealth and luxury. But now, as they faced the fallout from their choices, Ella stood tall, her success, not just in business, but in life, a testament to the power of integrity, hard work, and the strength of character. Her journey, from the small laundry shop to building a successful empire, had been one of perseverance, resilience, and unwavering belief in herself. And as she looked back on the journey she had taken with Alex, she knew that every step had been worth it. I hope you enjoyed this amazing story. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to share, like, comment.